All right, good morning, world. What's up? Everybody doing well? It's Tuesday, and we are rocking along and just enjoying life. Hope you are. It's a busy week for us, man. I got something every night and up early in the morning doing these things. So it's gonna be a great day, and hope you're doing well. We are rocking along in the book of Philippians. We're moving into chapter 4 today, and although there's the continuation of what happened yesterday that will carry over and spill over into today. But since we moved into chapter 4, I just want to remind us that the book falls into it's 4 chapters, and we consider it the legs of the Christian faith, what we stand on. So LEGS, Christ is my life, was chapter 1. Christ is my example, we saw that in chapter 2. Christ is my goal in chapter 3. Christ is my strength in chapter 4. So that's kind of where we are. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so we'll be looking at that as we move through this text. But today, it's kind of, like I say, a continuation of yesterday. Yesterday, he reminded us of all of the enemies that we have, and he lists them out. About their enemies of the cross and all of those things, and he reminds us that we should keep our eye on the prize, and that was that was where we were yesterday. So he says then in chapter 4, verse 1, therefore, and again, not to be so redundant, but every time we see a therefore, we stop and ask what it's there for, and we know it refers to what was just happening. So he's saying therefore, look, so the therefore is the fact that the church is under attack spiritually. Remember in chapter 1, verse 28, he says, hey, don't be alarmed by your opponents, right? So we know that the church has opponents. They have opposing forces coming at them. And it's true of all of the church. It's true of us individually. We have the unseen force of the spirit world, but we also have the flesh and blood of people that we see coming at us. And then same chapter, he said it's been granted to you to suffer. So they have opponents, and they're incurring a measure of suffering. And so we know that. In the light of all of this great joy in the passage, we do realize that the church is always under attack, and it was true of the Philippian church as well. He encouraged them to be of the same mind. Remember, because so we realize that they were struggling with maintaining this same mindset, so to speak, and which happens, right? Personalities and different things. And then he says in that we just looked at yesterday, these are called the enemies of the cross. So he says, therefore, and then I love this pause, almost as a good father just responds to his children, and he says, beloved brethren. Like, hey, those who, man, I love your family. I love you guys. Therefore, family that I deeply love, that I long for. I so wish I could be with you face to face. You're my joy, he says. And so that concept of you take me to a greater place, and you're my crown. That is that you're kind of the thing that I set up to say, hey, this is how church should be. You're the crown. You're the pinnacle of things, he says. In this way, stand firm in the Lord, my beloved. So what's he talking about here? Well, one, he called him beloved, but he says this, stand firm in the Lord. In this way, stand firm in the Lord. In what way? Well, in what he's getting ready to tell us. And so for the next few days, we're going to look and see how do we stand firm. But the key of this first section is the concept of standing firm. Standing firm means, and it was really, we looked at that in Ephesians, when after having done all, we stand. Stand firm. That's something all the way through the scriptures. We're not told really to advance against the enemy, so to speak. We just stand firm. We're not to retreat. Hold the line. You've heard that in war and in other things. Even in football. Hey, hold the line, right? Don't let it break. Hold the line. Hold your position. Stand firm. And so he's really speaking of this concept of stability. That hey, remain stable, stand firm, right? I mean, we've seen this all the way through Scripture. James says, don't be tossed to and fro, right? So there's this ability where we've got our sea legs about us. We're standing firm. We're not unstable. We're not being tossed to and fro. We're not being victimized. We're not being reeled by things coming at us, and all of a sudden we play the victim. That will create instability. We're not entangled in sin. That will keep us from being able to stand firm. And we are mature. And these are the terms that you hear used in this area of stability. The church has to have that. We have to stand firm, right? This is key. It's key of life, really. There's this standing firm. There's this stability. Instability creates all sorts of avenues for trouble. And so there's a discipline that's required, really, for unity. Two are better than one, right? There's this discipline where we encourage each other. Two are better than one, for they have a good return for their labor. A cord of three strands cannot easily be torn. There's something about this unity, which is where he's getting ready to get into, because he's saying in verse 2, I urge Euodia and Syntyche to live in harmony in the Lord. So here he's got these two women that are creating disharmony. They're creating, and by virtue of that creates instability, right? Whenever you have conflict within the ranks, it creates an instability, and this is what he's saying. Now, I think it's kind of crazy that in the middle of this book, um, two women's names are put in there. I can't imagine. I'm sitting in church and a letter comes in from the Apostle Paul, and they're going to read it in church, and Tammy and I are sitting there, and then in the middle of this sermon, I'm going, it's kind of interesting, and all of a sudden he says, hey, and encourage Randy and Tammy to get along. I'm like, what? Right? I mean, it's kind of crazy that, but this is what I love about Paul. Listen, this is a big deal to him. Of all the things that are pressing in on him, his upcoming beheading, possibly, all the stress that's going on in all the other churches that he's writing to, and some are in much more difficulty than this. There's this intimate awareness of what instability can do in a church, and so he sees what we would consider as just a minor scuffle. A couple of women upset about something. Could have been a men. I'm not picking on women, but this was the situation here. But where there is disharmony, disunity, and instability results. We know that to be true, right? People choose sides when that happens, and so you've got some who are going, hey, I agree with Utica, and others are going, Euodia, and some are saying, no, I'm for Syntyche, and there's this side coming up. There's negativity that creeps in. All of a sudden you look at somebody else with suspicion, and if you're one of the women, you're trying to gather other people to your side. There's gossip that takes place. There's unforgiveness that takes place. There's pride that takes place, and when that happens, instability is creeping in. Now, don't diminish this reality. We know it's true, but think back when maybe your mom and your dad were fighting amongst each other, and you've seen it played out in so many times. The kids are looking around like, is everything okay? What's going on? And then they may even ask the question, are y'all going to get a divorce? Right? You see what happens when just conflict, and it could have been a minor thing, but people raised their voices and there was things going on, and it creates this level of uncertainty, and it creates instability. It happens. It happens in countries, right? It's happening right now among us. We've got two parties, political parties that are kind of going at it with each other, and it's creating great instability, isn't it? And it's creating great division. I'm a firm believer that we in this country, when we remove a political party stuff and what we're being told from those forces, and we just go about our life, it really is good. We get along. I mean, I mix and mingle with people of different race and color and age and financial issues, and what I've noticed just going through my life, and I think it's true of yours. We don't have any issues. But when there's this thing going on above us, and we see this fighting, all of a sudden we feel unstable, and we feel like I got to choose a side, and so we begin to do those things. This is what happens. The instability in our country today is the same thing that he sees going on in this church. Now, I don't want to talk about that today. I want to stay to the Word, but it's true in churches too. It happens in churches. This kind of thing happens. We witnessed that in some of the other churches that we pastored. There was this fighting that was going on, and at one time there was one where I couldn't get someone to even have a conversation with me. I appealed to the elders. Hey, let's sit down and talk. And they refused to arbitrate in some of those things, thinking it would go away, and it didn't. And it actually ultimately brought the church down. And so it's destructive forces. I personally have been aware of it, and it's a grief that I bear, even though it's been, several years ago since that happened. But the body of Christ needs each other to stand in harmony. This is what. How do we stand firm? We do that by making sure we stay in harmony each with the other, because our fight isn't against each other. Our fight is what's happening out there. Now, this wasn't a doctrinal issue. I realize that, because if it was a doctrinal issue, Paul would be in there and he would be taking the finer points, because he would find the one that was in error and he would bring them back. The fact that he's not saying that, he's saying, hey, just urge them to get along, says this is more of a personal issue. The problem will never be just two people, though. We all have to be involved with this. This is why you can't do church virtually without a core group of people that you're hanging with and looking at physically, because we just need that iron that sharpens iron. We need what happens, I think Paul says it in 1 Thessalonians 5:14. I urge you, brothers and sisters, warn those who are idle and disruptive, encourage the disheartened, help the weak, be patient with everyone. These are the things that we are to do with each other. And so here's what he says then. He says, I urge Euodia and Syntyche to live in harmony. What's he saying? Hey, let's get along here. Come on. Put the silliness aside. Let's major on what's important. Let's get over ourselves. Let's love each other. Then he says, indeed, true companion. Now, by that term, he didn't call a name out. I'm assuming he's referring to the pastor who's going to receive this letter and then read it to the congregation. Indeed, true companion, I ask you to help these women. Listen, and these are good women. These aren't some minor players. Look what he says here. They've shared in my struggle in the cause of the gospel, together with Clement, also and the rest of my fellow workers. These women, he said, have partnered with people. They've partnered with Clement. Now, we don't know a lot about him, but apparently he was a major player in the ministry there. And he says, and the rest of my fellow workers. And so there's this, he's saying, hey, help these women. Again, I find it amazing of all these issues, Paul speaks of this, because if there's not peace, if there's not peace in the church, if there's not peace in your home, if there's not peace in our country, we will have instability. And Paul says, listen, we can't stand firm then. We can't hold the line. We can't fight what's going on out there if we're busy fighting what's going on within the ranks here. And so it's important for husband and wife, brother and sister to get along, to stay in harmony, because when the pressure comes and we're not in harmony, it will create even worse division and potentially destroy a family. It can destroy a church. It can destroy a nation. And so this thing is important. When he says stand firm then, this is his point, stand firm, be stable, be mature. Part of that is learning how to relate with other people, how to be in harmony with each other. And I love what he says, the way he ends this, whose names are in the book of life. That puts everything in perspective, doesn't it? I'm convinced that we could stop a lot of wrangling and fussing and just silliness if we just grabbed some shoulders and shook some people and say, hey, get your act together, man. That's the woman that you fell in love with, however many years ago. This is what you loved about her. Wake up, man. You got a good thing here. And to do the same thing with the woman. Come on, man. This guy's working hard, trying to take care of his family, and he's under stress about so many things. Lighten up on him. You see how that works? Otherwise, the family begins to be fractured. This is what I feel like doing to our political parties. I feel like shaking them and going, hey, wake up here. What are you thinking? But Paul's saying, hey, it's true in the church, man. We just can't. Standing firm is how we defeat those who are enemies of the cross. And so that's why all through the scriptures he says be unified. Jesus, in his prayer in the garden, I pray that they would be one. as you and I, Father, are one, that the world would know. What's he praying for? Unity there. Paul, I urge you to walk worthy of the calling, to be completely humble, to be completely gentle, to be patient, forbearing, maintaining the spirit of unity. He's not talking about uniformity. He's talking about unanimity, where we all are under the one banner of Christ. We can have differing opinions about all sorts of things, but those are all minor in comparison to the one thing. And so Paul is really stressing this here. And he's saying, hey, listen, we're all citizens of heaven. Our names are written in the book of life. Why are we in this world acting silly right now and fighting against each other? Man, I get excited about this understanding of things because I have lived way too long knowing what disunity, how it can destroy a church. I've seen it 2 or 3 occasions. I've seen it personally in my own life, how pockets of that kind of wrangling happens, and it divides the church, and people trickle out one way or the other, and you see the devastation. So for you and me today, before I let you go, you have a conflict going on? Is there a conflict you have with someone right now? That's not over some biblical doctrinal issue. You just are at odds about something silly. Then you need to do the right thing. You need to get along. If you see someone that's that way, you have a responsibility to step in, right? I mean, there is that aspect of where our brothers keepers step in, create stability. That's what's needed. Had the elders at our church where we were that had this unity, had they stepped in and had they sought to create unity among us, the stability of that church might have been bolstered, and that church may still be going on today. So it's important that we understand this. Avoid pointing fingers and choosing sides. Let's just live in harmony. This is what he's saying. Why are we living in harmony? Because, man, we're on the same team. We're going to the same destination. We're brothers and sisters in Christ. And so that's the message today. I'm glad you hung out today. We're gonna see some greater stuff tomorrow about what it means to create this stability, and it's going to deal with our thought life. And so we're going to look at that tomorrow. But until then, you guys have a great day, and I'll see you then.